your despair. If you wanna talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's scary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers talk show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
Of you, what hijacked my world at night to a place in the past we've been cast out of. Now we're back in the fight. We're back on the train. Chain gang. Circumstance beyond our control. The phone, TV, and the news of the world got in the house like a pigeon from hell. Through sand in our eyes and descended like flies. Put us back on the train. Back on the chain gang. Us to live like we do, bring me to my knees when I see what they've done to you.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.
Now, the latest news from the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network newsroom. I'm Guy Ticker, NDTR News Director, anchor, reporter, and lifeguard. There has never been anyone more relatable than Bigfoot. It is understandable if you label Sasquatch Sunset a farce. It's a new film from brothers David and Nathan Zellner, now playing in select cities, that follows an isolated Sasquatch family. A patriarch, Nathan Zellner, his beleaguered mate, Riley Keough, and their offspring, played by Jesse Eisenberg and Christoph Sajak-Danek. The family is objectively beastly. They communicate in grunts, snarls, and roars, and they're covered in matted fur which barely camouflages their barbed genitals and grotesque teats. They release rip-roaring flatulence and streams of diarrhea into their idyllic surroundings, scratching their orifices with abandon. But their personalities are, against all odds, decidedly human. Like humans, the Sasquatches engage in jubilant sex, then primarily clean themselves with nearby foliage. Like humans, they get really excited when they find a turtle. And like humans, they struggle with existential despair, sensing that their time, a time of ethereal flora and fauna, of abundant resources, of privacy and security, is coming to an end. So, no, Sasquatch Sunset isn't a farce. It's an expression of our collective anxiety, pulsating in the wake of a relentless pandemic, ongoing economic uncertainty, imminent climate catastrophe, and unthinkable global atrocities. It's also the latest in a recent spike in Sasquatchery throughout American pop culture. As Sasquatch mania sweeps the nation, one thing is clear. In the immortal words of mega hottie Fox Mulder, we want to believe. I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com because the truth is out there. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, the home of Night Dreams Talk Radio, with Gary Anderson, syndicated worldwide. Paranormal Talk Radio, like you remember.
Well, here it is, the 24th of April already, and I'm still recovering what I had to pay the IRS. Well, JC, in the news, in Washington State, you can be made into compost. You can be put in a canvas bag and have a tree grow from all your remains. You can be, buried. Or you can even be made into a table with composite material, resin. I don't know. Could you imagine a kitchen table or a coffee table with your loved one and just staring up at you?
Yeah, I will say your state gives you plenty of options to, what to do with your loved ones afterwards. But that would be interesting, to be eating on one of your loved ones, I guess.
I don't know. I don't think I could handle that. But I don't even know, if I really didn't like somebody, I guess I could be made into compost and then have it put in a bag and sent to them along with some tomato seeds.
Yeah, that's another option. Yeah, I'm telling you, your state has plenty of options for the afterlife, and it's amazing. And you know what? I think they'll come up with some more.
What do you think about that new documentary movie about, Bigfoot? Well, the one that was on the news. Come on. Click, click, click. Come on.
There's so many of them, but listen.
What did you just listen to? What were you laughing to?
I was laughing to the Bigfoot documentary.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. What planet are you on, X?
I don't know. I think I'm on Bigfoot planet, but listen, there's so many of those come out, Gary. It reminds me of the train. Remember the train one? Geez.
Yeah, but this one's kind of really grotesque. That's what in the news that our news director was talking about. A lot of the people, when it was being screened, just walked right out of the theaters. They couldn't handle it.
I read that. They walked right out of it. That blindsided me too. It's a whole new outlook on Bigfoot.
I don't want to see some Bigfoot balls.
No, I don't want to see him making baby Bigfoots either.
I don't want to see diarrhea being wiped with branches either. But, evidently somebody, fronted the money to make the movie.
Yeah, I'm gun shy next time I go in the woods about what I touch, what leaves I touch now. Jeez.
Well, you remember, Sci-Fi had a series of shark movies. Remember those sharks, they came from a hurricane, came down tornadoes and all this stuff. When that first one came out, they had a hard time even finding, one, a director to direct it, two, the movie stars. Nobody wanted to do it. They didn't want to be involved in it because they thought it was really ridiculous. After it came out, it was a big hit. So they made a bunch of them. And then actors that were ridiculing, saying, I would never go on that. They were lining up trying to get on it.
They were. Listen, and you're right. They even have Bigfoot against a shark and shark against this and tornado shark. You're right. And that is exactly what happened. It became like a cult kind of thing, and everybody wants to be part of it.
Well, I'm not going to mention the actor's name in this Bigfoot movie, but I think, that might be his last movie he makes.
But only time will tell, right?
I don't know. What's your credential? Well, I made this movie. I was dressed up naked with a whole bunch of hair on me. And I didn't talk. I didn't have any. I just had a grunt and groan.
And yeah, use a few leaves here and there.
Yeah, I don't know. What is the world coming to?
What's it coming to when we need that kind of entertainment? Ask yourself that one.
Well, it's as good as Congress, isn't it? With the UFO disclosure.
Is that what they call that?
I don't know. That if they have a next one, they're going to furnish everybody in the, it's in the hearing a roll of toilet paper.
Yeah, it's funny because that's like having somebody who owns a casino running a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. It's just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope everybody is enjoying the show tonight. I am. I just can't wait to watch that on I think Paramount, the Bigfoot movie. I don't know if I can handle that.
Oh, you can handle it. I know some of the sci-fi movies you watch. You can
I don't know. We're having chili, where they had chili for dinner. I'm going to eat it after the show. It might go good with the movie. I don't know. Anyway, who's our guest tonight? What are we going to be talking about on the show?
Oh, let me tell you something, Gary. Our guest tonight is Tobias Wayland. Now, he is an author and a patient at 14 who has been actively investigating the unusual for well over a decade, and we're going to be talking about Mothman and many Mothman sightings and what's going on with them.
Well, Tobias, welcome back to the show, my friend. It's been a long time since you've been on the show.
Way too long. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for having me back, Gary. It's great to talk to you as always.
Well, maybe you ought to write a screenplay, about Mothman. I mean, have you seen anything about this new Bigfoot movie?
I know exactly what you are talking about. I watched the trailer for it, and it seems like it leans pretty heavily on the gross out humor. So I think it's not one I would probably go to the theater for, but I might watch it at home when I can pause it and get up and go do something else or whatever while it's playing. Or
go to the bathroom and throw up.
Yeah. Right. I mean, hopefully not, but you never know, because it does seem pretty gross. I actually was reading a review because it had aired at a festival first. I think it was a big festival like Sundance or something. And a bunch of people walked out because I don't think they were expecting it to be, what it was, like the type of movie it was. So I don't know how well it's going to do. Maybe general audiences will be more favorable towards that kind of thing than, snooty like critics or something. But we will see.
I don't want to watch a movie where Bigfoot make love.
No, I mean, no sane person should. I understand that. That's not necessarily something I want to see. It's supposed to be a comedy. So
that comedy, we'll like the Bigfoot has diarrhea in the bushes and is wiping his butt off with branches. I don't know. Again, I just don't think I can stomach it.
I'm also dubious. So yes.
So why don't we write a screenplay about Mothman? I think it might be, like I was talking about the shark thing that, sci-fi did back in the early 2000s,
Sharknado.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to be the director. Nobody wanted to be in it. After it came out, everybody, even William Shatner, wanted to be in it.
Oh, yeah. Once it started making a bunch of money, those were really popular. So many cameos. After that first movie, people were getting in line to just have small bit parts in those movies. It was hilarious.
Oh, yeah. So what is going on, my friend, with, I hate to say it, Mothman?
Well, we continue to get reports from the Midwest. Hasn't been as hectic. The reports haven't been coming in as quickly as they were several years ago. But interestingly enough, and I always suspected this would be the case just based on prior knowledge of how these things tend to go, that they would never stop entirely. And that has proven to be true. The most recent case that I've investigated was from a woman down in Chicago who was driving one evening to go pick up her dinner. And that's normal, right? So many of these reports, and I can't stress this enough, just happen when people are out minding their own business. They're running an errand or something, and the last thing they expect to have happen is for them to run headlong into the impossible, right? So she is out driving one night at around 10 p.m. Again, this was September of last year, early September. And she's driving along, and she's on Westlake Avenue, and she's driving through this wooded part of that street. And so that's another thing that people who aren't necessarily from the Midwest don't exactly realize, is that there are a lot of forest preserves and parks and just sort of forested areas in within this metropolitan area. So it's not unusual to be driving through these sort of natural areas, right? And so she had just driven by this cemetery, and she passed it, and she continues on, and she notices at first, out of the corner of her eye, these red lights, and she looks immediately, because at first she suspects that they could be the lights of somebody's bicycle, right? And so you always want to be aware of bicyclists that when you're out driving, and she looks over, and it's no bicyclist. In fact, it appeared to be, from her description, this tall humanoid being with these bulky wings and red eyes, and she drove past this thing, and she was naturally freaked out. At first, I spoke to her, and she told me that at first she was kind of trying to talk herself out of it. She was saying to herself, "No, you couldn't have seen that. It had to be something normal, something natural. Maybe it was a deer." And of course, that was ridiculous. It didn't take her very long to figure out that what she had seen was no deer. But I thought that was a really interesting reaction for her to have, because oftentimes people don't want to have these experiences. That's normal. Most normal, sane people don't want to see something like that. And so that was her reaction. And also what was interesting about this case was she described having this weird brain fog. So with her, she said that she had kind of been out of it that whole evening. Like when she got in the car to drive to go pick up her food, she had noticed that she just kind of was kind of foggy, kind of out of it, right? And so that contributed to the atmosphere of eeriness with her sighting, and that's another thing that you'll find not just in Mothman reports, but across the board in paranormal reports anywhere. I think probably pretty popularly in ufology, you'll get that description as well. Known as the Oz factor, right? This feeling of otherworldliness that just creates this weird atmosphere. And so she had experienced that as well. And in talking to her, I did what I always do. And as we're wrapping up our conversation, at least about the Mothman stuff, I asked her, well, hey, have you ever experienced anything else strange? Anything at all, even if you don't think it's related to this, just whatever. And as often happens, she said, well, yes, I have, actually. And she went on to tell me about 2 different UFO sightings that she had in her life. And the first one was during the summer of 2022, and she was living in Los Angeles at that time. And she said she was standing out on her balcony with her roommate at around 1 or 2 in the morning, and they saw these 3 white lights hovering. And they were hovering out over these hills that they could see, obviously. And the lights were moving separately, so they weren't seemingly part of the same craft. And so that was interesting. But again, that wasn't her only UFO sighting. So she had a second UFO sighting, and this one was much closer to her Mothman sighting, because that second sighting was September of that same year. So September 2022, really just about a year prior to the Mothman sighting. So she was in the village of Rosemont, which is just northwest of Chicago, and she'd been picked up by her father at the train station because she was visiting home, and then of course she has since moved back to the Chicago area. And so she and her father watched this red, green, blue, and yellow object for several minutes as it appeared in the sky above them. And they watched it until suddenly, quite suddenly, it just shot upwards, like shot into space and disappeared. And it was just gone. And what's interesting about that to me is how often you see that with other Mothman witnesses. You know, so many of these people also have reported UFO sightings. Now, I don't know what you make of that, Gary, but it's fascinating to me because it is this thing that keeps popping up over and over again.
Well, you know, Tobias, you know, for years I always hear people tying Bigfoot in with UFOs, but again, why not? Why not Mothman?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, why not? And again, like you said, it's not unusual for people to report other cryptids like Bigfoot or Dogman or any number of monsters, for lack of a better term, in the same areas as we receive UFO sightings. Now, often with Bigfoot, what you'll get are anomalous lights, and so not necessarily something that looks like a craft, although that does pop up sometimes, but most often just weird anomalous lights. And I've seen those myself, actually. I've done significant field research in the Kettle Moraine State Forest here in Wisconsin, and it's an area known for Bigfoot, Dogman, and even winged humanoid sightings. And I've seen these anomalous lights with my own eyes. You know, they're often white or orange in color. The one that I saw the clearest was white. Well, two actually that no, now that I think about it, the three, sorry, I've seen quite a few. And as I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, well, there was that one time. Oh, but then there was this time. And then there was this other time. But yeah, all of the ones that I have seen the most clearly were sort of bright white lights. And they appear sort of very quickly and just as quickly are gone. But again, not to digress too much, this is something that is commonly reported in these areas. And really, what's interesting too is in these specific areas, it's not just lights that people will report alongside, you know, Bigfoot or Mothman or Dogman or whatever. Is you'll often get a variety of different monster reports out of these same specific areas. So like I mentioned before, southeastern Wisconsin, it's not just Bigfoot that people are seeing there. It's not just winged humanoids. It's not just Dogman. It's all three, and in a relatively tight geographic area. And that's the same throughout these sighting areas. If you look at where things are being reported just south of us, you know, in the Chicago metropolitan area, it's not just Mothman. You know, in these same areas, you'll get other weird humanoids. Everything being reported from hairy humanoids to mantis-looking people to shadow people, and again in these relatively tight geographic areas. Meanwhile, UFOs are being reported overhead simultaneously. So it's fascinating. You really do get these clusters of phenomena in these specific areas, and I don't know what to make of it specifically, but I think it speaks to the potential for a much stranger explanation for many of these phenomena than just undiscovered, otherwise mundane biological species. You know,
I think you put it very well put. You know, what is the difference between a Mothman and these flying creatures like in the deserts of the cliffs of Arizona?
Well, that's a great question, because, you know, we've received winged humanoid reports from all over the place. It's not just West Virginia or around the Great Lakes. You know, I've seen winged humanoid reports or received them personally from coast to coast. I mean, literally like Baltimore area or Maryland, rather, to California. And the greatest variation that you see in those reports really is just geography, because otherwise you're getting some very, very similar reports from very disparate locations. I've received some from up in Canada, as far south as Texas, and people are pretty consistently describing the same type of thing. And there is some variance. Sometimes people will describe different heights or just little specific details and things that are different, but otherwise, sort of generally, you can see that what they're all talking about are these anomalous winged humanoids that appear under very strange circumstances, are often, almost always really, but not necessarily so, accompanied by other strange phenomena. And they're just inexplicable in any known biological terms. So it's very weird.
Now, has any people been reported missing where any of these sightings were cited?
That is a great question. So naturally, many of them having come from around larger metropolitan areas, like there are missing people that are known, to have gone from these specific areas, but nothing that I would be comfortable correlating to the sightings themselves. That is to say, there isn't any strong evidence to support the idea that there's a link between winged humanoid sightings and people going missing. I mean, you never know, because missing people often, by definition, are unexplained. We don't know where they went exactly, but at the risk of speculation, and that's something that I take very seriously when you're dealing with something as traumatic to people's families as missing persons. Again, I just can't stress enough that there really isn't any evidence to support any kind of link at this time.
Well, the FBI has had a statement about Bigfoot, that they have done an extensive background on Bigfoot, and they come up with that there is something, but, again, without proof. I don't know. We need to take this break for about 3.5 minutes. And when we come back, I want to ask you more questions about, these Mothman. What do they look like? And, Jeeper Creepers, the series of movies on that, has that caused more reports of seeing Mothman? So we'll find out that with Tobias right after this break. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. We'll be back right after this break. So go get yourself something warm to drink, get in that easy chair, prop up that feet, and turn up the volume, because we got some good music.
Put
Now the news. I'm Guy Ticker, Night Dreams Talk Radio News Director, anchor reporter, fashionista, barista, and conquistador. NASA says part of the International Space Station crashed into a Florida home. The U.S. Space Agency, NASA, confirmed that an object crashed into a home in Florida earlier this month, and it was part of the International Space Station. The metal object was jettisoned by the orbiting outpost in March of 2021, NASA said, after analyzing the sample at the Kennedy Space Center. The 1.6-pound metal object tore through 2 layers of ceiling after re-entering Earth's atmosphere. Homeowner Alejandro Otero said his son was nearly injured by the impact. NASA said the object was part of some 5,800 pounds of hardware that was dumped by the station after it had its new lithium-ion batteries installed. The hardware was expected to fully burn up during entry through Earth's atmosphere in March of this year. However, a piece of hardware survived and impacted a home in Naples, Florida. The debris was determined to be part of a stanchion used to mount batteries on a cargo pallet. The homeowner said, quote, "It almost hit my son. He was 2 rooms over and heard it all." He added, "I was shaking. I was completely in disbelief. What are the chances of something landing on my house with such force to cause so much damage? I'm super grateful that nobody got hurt." According to NASA, the ISS will perform a detailed investigation on how the debris survived burn-up. In other news, climate change. El Nino ends with uncertainty over cooler future. The powerful El Nino weather event, which along with climate change has helped push global temperatures to new highs, has ended, say scientists. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology says the Pacific Ocean has cooled substantially in the past week. This naturally occurring episode began last June and brought warmer waters to the surface of the Pacific, adding extra heat to the atmosphere. But what happens next is uncertain, say researchers. A string of recent global monthly high temperature records has led some scientists to fear that the world could be tipping into a new phase of even faster climate change. Finally, Stonehenge research explores possible moon connection. Researchers are investigating whether Stonehenge aligns with the positions of the moon as well as the sun. English Heritage and experts from other organizations are studying the connection between the ancient monument and a major lunar standstill, which happens every 18.6 years. The term refers to the point when moonrise and moonset are furthest apart along the horizon, and the next takes place in 2024-25. The theory is that these lunar movements might have been noticed in the early phase of Stonehenge and gone on to influence its later design. Due to major lunar standstills occurring relatively infrequently, academics have jumped at the chance to study it. English Heritage is working with experts from the universities of Oxford, Leicester, and Bournemouth, as well as the Royal Astronomical Society. Dr. Fabio Silva from Bournemouth University said, quote, "So we could be talking about a generational event that people might have come to Wiltshire for." He went on to say, "We'll never be able to prove this, but the greater the understanding we can get of these monuments and the moon, the stronger the argument will be." Lecturers and students from Bournemouth University will document the moon's movements and relationship with the stones. Dr. Silva continued, quote, "It'll add a much more diverse nuance to the answers we already have," close quote. Stonehenge is widely known for its connection to the movements of the sun, in particular at summer solstice, when thousands flock to the monument in the early hours to witness the sunrise. Archaeoastronomer, that's someone who studies how people in the past understood phenomena in the sky, Professor Clive Ruggles from the University of Leicester said, quote, "Stonehenge's architectural connection to the sun is well known, but its link with the moon is less well understood," close quote. The 4 station stones align with the moon's extreme positions, and researchers have debated for years whether this was deliberate, and if so, how this was achieved, and what might have been its purpose. I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com, because the truth is out there. Deep in the Amazon jungle, one man.
Hi, I'm Stan Gordon. Check out the Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary the Big Guy.
Yeah, let me finish. One man.
Hi, I'm Mark Muncy. Check out Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary the Big Guy.
Yeah, do you mind? One man, naked and afraid.
I'm losing my mind.
You and me both, sister. One man, Gary the Big Guy. No boats, no lights, no motor cars, not a single luxury.
Hey, any more and you'll have to pay a royalty.
Okay, that's it. Hit it! From the summer vacation studios deep in the Amazon jungle, from that tree right there. See at the top, he's swinging.
I'm losing my mind.
Twice?
All right. Coming to you live, for now, on Night Dreams Talk Radio, naked and afraid, Gary the Big Guy Anderson.
And I'm coming from you, well, from Sunnyview Nudist Resort, bringing to you live the show here tonight, talking about Mothman. Well, we are back, and, if you really think about these, Jeeper Creepers, they made, I think, 3 of them. Did that have anything to do with reports, do you think, of Mothman?
Well, it's an interesting question, Gary, and the reason being that I don't know that any reports have been inspired by popular culture, but it is something that you see relatively commonly used by people to contextualize their own sightings. So, somebody might see this weird winged humanoid, right? And they lack the vocabulary to properly describe it. And it's not because they're dumb or uneducated or anything. It's because they're seeing something so far outside of their experience that it's just incredibly difficult to relate that to somebody else because it is so alien. And so what you'll see is people will use a pop culture reference to kind of ground it. So they'll say, it reminded me of that monster from Jeepers Creepers, or I had a woman in Rockford. This is an interesting sighting. It was actually one of those where they saw a UFO as well. It was on the same night as their winged humanoid sighting. But she related what she had seen to this character Marcus from the movie Underworld. So there was this big kind of bat-like scary winged monster guy in this movie, and so that is what she used to try to describe it.
Very interesting. I think we got a caller. Who do we have out there?
This is Tom.
Okay, Tom, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, sir. I have a question for your guest pertaining to the Mothman phenomena. And my question is, several guests that have come on your show, Gary, have talked about the different genres of Bigfoot. And my question to your guest is, number one, do you think that there could be a genre, so to speak, of species that are like what are being described as Mothman, and maybe variants of those different species?
Tobias, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. That's a great question, and I think my answer to that would be yes, and the reason being that Mothman is kind of a general term, or at least it's become one, although you could easily make the argument that it was being used as such back in the 60s when it was first introduced around the winged humanoid sightings in Point Pleasant. But it tends to describe really any kind of winged humanoid. Now, I've received reports from people that describe a 7 or 8 foot tall, hairy humanoid with large leathery wings. And I've received reports from people who have described a similar in height humanoid with also similarly leathery wings. But the creature they saw was covered in what looked to be scales, like some kind of reptile or something similar. I've had people talk about seeing glowing red eyes. I've had people talk about seeing large black eyes. And so there is a significant enough variation where I think that we have to allow for the possibility that that what people are seeing is either separate individuals with wildly varying appearances within sort of the same species, or a number of related species, or really even possibly a number of totally unrelated species that that just happen to sort of operate within the same sphere. I like to describe it sort of like how, say you have this forest, and in this forest there are bears, there are wolves, and there are mountain lions, and they all operate under similar principles in terms of how they interact with their environment and so on and so forth. They're all biological creatures, and so they have some things in common, but they are very much separate species, separate animals. And so I think we have to consider that something similar could be happening in these paranormal phenomena.
Well, again, we were talking a little bit about these flying creatures and, the canyons of Arizona. In a way, people report those as looking more like a devil with wings. The American natives describe them as devils. Again, the description of them compared to Mothman is quite a bit different.
It certainly can be. And again, like, there are other variations. Sometimes people will talk about seeing feathers. Sometimes they'll talk about seeing fur. Sometimes they won't see either. And then you'll get these descriptions of leathery wings. But if you go all the way back to the 60s, like, those kinds of variations existed in the Point Pleasant sightings as well, where you would have people because the word Mothman didn't exist when these sightings started, right? That actually came a decent amount of time later, and so people were referring to this thing as a giant bird or a monster bird, and some people would report bat-like characteristics. Some people would report bird-like characteristics. The one thing that they all seem to have in common were these oddly humanoid characteristics, and so that's really sort of the defining aspect of this phenomenon, or set of somehow related phenomena, is the humanoid appearance. Almost any other characteristic is seemingly variable.
How about tails? Again, these things in Arizona are reported. Some of them, people are saying they have long tails.
Now, that's not something I've seen a lot of. Well, with specifically humanoid sightings. Now, it's not necessarily unusual for a witness of, a supposed pterosaur sighting or something to describe a long tail. And often when they do, they will describe seeing this sort of pterodactyl-looking creature, at least the Hollywood conception of a pterodactyl.
Wait a minute,
right?
Is there wires hanging on these? Nonsense.
No, that would make it a lot easier, though, wouldn't it? So the reason that I mentioned that specifically is because what's interesting about some of these pterosaur sightings is that the more that paleontologists learn about these creatures, the less we think that Hollywood had it right when it came to actually showing them, right? And so it's just fascinating that when people see these things, what they're seeing is what they think they should be seeing according to Hollywood, but that doesn't necessarily match up with the actual science behind it. And so you have to consider the possibility that, like Keel's ultra-terrestrials, right, there might be something that is projecting an image or manipulating their consciousness. But often with those pterosaur sightings, what you'll get people describing are these sort of longish tails, and they'll often end in a sort of like spade shape, and that's pretty consistent, honestly. And so that's about as close as I've seen in my investigations of weird flying creatures. But they are similar enough reports where there could be some kind of connection there, because even Keel, back when he was writing the Mothman prophecies, was making connections between other types of reported flying anomalous beings like thunderbirds or the Garuda, and he was relating these folkloric beings to what people were seeing in Point Pleasant, even though the folkloric beings were much more often more avian than what necessarily was being reported in the Mothman sightings.
Well, here's the question for you. Like, we haven't found any remains of Bigfoot. We got footprints and stuff like that. People supposedly got hair. But, and that DNA comes back, well, they're not sure what it is. But how about, like, Mothman? Is there any bodies ever found? Anybody claim to ever found a body or any remains of a Mothman?
No, not so far as I am aware. The closest thing to real physical evidence that I have ever encountered was a couple of different witnesses, like totally separate witnesses with different experiences, who had talked about their cars being attacked and saying that their cars had damage. Now, both of these accounts happened decades ago. One, I think, was in the 70s, and then the other was in the 80s. And so neither car was still around. There wasn't any photographic evidence to support this. And that isn't to say that I didn't find these witnesses credible. I spoke to them both at length and have communicated with them multiple times. And I found them to be very credible in terms of them just being forthright and not seeming to embellish their stories or anything like that. And so it very much seemed as though what they were relating to me were their authentic experiences. But that's about the closest that I've come, is reports of damage to things, having been done by winged humanoids. Now, I think something we have to consider on that front, though, is, are these winged humanoids, are they something like a biological species that could leave behind a body, or are they something else? When you go back to Keel and his ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, he conceived of most paranormal phenomena, including winged humanoids and most UFOs and UFO occupants, as basically being a type of projection. This illusory projection made by these beings to, well, we don't really know why. We'd have to guess at their motivation, but perhaps ostensibly to confuse us or manipulate us for whatever weird alien reasons. And so if that's the case, if what we're really dealing with is something that has manipulated our consciousness into seeing a winged humanoid rather than some kind of actual biological species, then there wouldn't be any kind of body, well, and so that makes a certain amount of sense.
Well, could they be a species of aliens, and that's what they actually look like? Everybody thinks an ET looks like a little gray. Again, we really don't have proof what they really look like, other than people what they say they've seen. But I mean, maybe these things could be a species. Tourists, they're checking out different parts of the world.
Oh, sure, Gary. Now, we can't rule anything out because we don't have enough evidence, certainly no proof, to support any particular hypothesis, like definitively, right? And so, sure, I have to allow for that as a possibility. I mean, there are some things that I question. Now, for instance, if you look at the dimensions of these things as described by witnesses, they'll usually tell you that what they saw was somewhere around 6 or 7 feet tall with maybe a 12 to 15 foot wingspan and a humanoid body. Now, something like that would have great difficulty flying. It should be, according to everything we know about biology and physics, actually be impossible for something like that to fly under any known means. Now, going ahead and following along with that speculation about being aliens, that isn't to say that it isn't possible that they would have some other means, some unknown technology or similar mechanism through which flight would still be possible. But it is something of a fly in the ointment there when trying to consider it. So it's a real head scratcher, honestly.
How far does the whole fable or the whole thing about Mothman, how far back have you been able to trace it?
Oh boy, if you count just winged humanoid sightings, and so that's disregarding any associated folklore surrounding large anomalous flying creatures. The oldest report that I have came from a guy named Gerald out of Braidwood, Illinois, from 1957. And so at that time, Gerald would have been 16, and he was out hunting with his brother and his, I think it was his brother's brother-in-law, actually. So his brother's wife's husband was also there. And they're all out hunting. And he said that he saw, well, they all saw this humanoid, this winged humanoid swoop down over them. And he described it as being relatively similar in many ways to what people had described today or ongoing. And it wasn't a particularly long sighting, and it didn't have some of the other paranormal aspects that people have reported, although he did, interestingly enough, have a UFO sighting just a few years later when he was in the Army stationed just south of Chicago. But again, it was consistent with enough of the reports that I had received, and Gerald certainly seemed like a credible person when I spoke to him. Enough for me to include it in the canon of sightings, per se. But yeah, that's the oldest one that I found that I think sort of fits the modern winged humanoid sighting report template, if you will.
The American natives, again, I'm going to go back to Arizona. This has been going back centuries where the American natives, have reported these flying, humanoids. And even as much as here in Washington State, I got to, back years ago, talk to the medicine woman for the Muckleshoot tribe. And they talked about how Bigfoot would come in and run off with babies and squaws and take off and eat them. That was one of the things. But again, when in Arizona, some of the tribe members talk about the same thing happening there, that they would swoop down, grab a baby or one of their wives and take off, and that would be the end of them. And this is going back, 100, 200 years and more back.
Sure. And that's something that you see other places as well. So there's the legend of the Piasaw bird among the Illini tribe. So just, south of me down in Illinois. And this Piasaw bird was this monstrous winged creature. And it was said to swoop down and take people away and devour them, and it would collect their bones in the cave in which it lived. So it just lived in this cave system over the Mississippi River there, and it would collect people's bones and stuff. And so it's interesting to me that you mentioned that, because this is consistent with other folklore that we have heard from other parts of the country. So that's fascinating. I don't think that it can be easily dismissed.
Well, there, like I said, there's people vanishing, in deserts, in the woods, all kinds of things. So there's things out there we still don't understand here in 2024. Now, how can they find your latest book? And do you have a website? Anything you want to share, Tobias?
Oh, sure. So, if you're interested in reading more about what I do at the Singular Fortean Society, you can, of course, go to our website, singularfortean.com, or you can follow us on social media. So just look for @SingularFortean on Facebook or Twitter or Tumblr, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, all of it. But I do encourage people to visit our website at singularfortean.com. Now, I've got 3 different books out right now: The Lake Michigan Mothman, High Strangeness in the Midwest, Strange Tales of the Impossible, and the Singular Fortean Society's Yuletide Guide to High Strangeness, all of which can be purchased directly through our website at singularfortean.com/books, or, of course, through any popular online retailer like Amazon. I also have begun doing a weekly podcast with my friend Ashley Hilt. So it's more of an adult podcast. So be prepared. Maybe wait until your kids are in bed. But we talk about all kinds of different weird things and high strangeness, and that's called On Wednesdays We Talk Weird. So feel free to check that out too.
Okay, great. Hey, Tobias, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Happy to do it, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Okay, my friend, you take care.
You too.
Well, JC, we don't have a show tomorrow because we're doing this new format thing, but who is our guest? Or I think we have a couple guests on Friday. Now, one thing before we go into that, I want to explain to the listeners, we're going to be live on all the apps on Friday for the first hour. So you can go listen to us on Apple, Speaker, or whatever, You can listen to us. We'll be live, but we're going to be on for 3 hours. After that first hour of feeding to the radio stations and to the apps, then we are going to be, another 2 hours on YouTube only. So if you are listening to us out there somewhere, like on Twitter or X or on Facebook right now, subscribe to our channel. That way you can, kind of keep up and chat with other people, make friends. Also, if you guys want us to keep taking phone calls, come on, people, you can certainly call in. It doesn't cost you anything to call in, and you can ask me or the guests some questions. Hey, that's what this show is all about. If you don't call in, what's the point of doing YouTube? Think about that. Well, on Friday, who do we have, JC?
Well, we have 2 fantastic guests, starting off with Camille James Harmon, an actress and a UFO experiencer on top of that. So that's going to be great. But the second half, our friend, Mr. Nick Valenti, is coming on talking about some very serious and scary Dogman updates with some cases. That's going to be really interesting. And plus, again, to make this work, to go the extra couple hours on YouTube, again, you might want to write this number down. It's 1-253-203-6777. And, call in, be part of the show. That's all the point. Don't let me handle all the weight. You can. Now, we made some changes. As you notice, we are playing, and it's going to be on Fridays, name music that you remember from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we all did that today. We signed some contracts. I signed a contract with the network. I'm going to be on for another year. Yay! I hope you guys all feel the same way. But again, to make this work, subscribe to this channel. And tell your friends about us, because we need to get the YouTube channel numbers up. That's important. We're doing so great on the apps. I mean, we're number 5 in what we do worldwide. But on YouTube, we're down like, why are we so low? So it's important. I'm going to ask each one of you, please share it with your friends. Tell your friends, hey, become a night dreamer. Well, till tomorrow, or I should say till Friday. Boy, I'm going to watch a lot of sci-fi tomorrow night. You know that, JC. Yeah, you should watch that new Bigfoot documentary.
Oh, I'm going to watch a lot. So everybody have a good one. We'll catch you on the other side of the campground. As soon as I remember what campground I'm staying at, we'll be back on Thursday. And thank you all.
From best-selling author Paul Wallace, The Invasion of Eden. Did our ancestors warn us about E.T. invasions? And is history repeating itself in the 21st century? The standoff between the Pentagon and the U.S. Congress has exposed a dark web of secrecy surrounding UFO retrievals. The Invasion of Eden explores archaeological sites, biblical and ancestral narratives from around the world. Probing military intelligence, ancient indigenous knowledge, and sources close to prime ministers and presidents, Paul asks, what are the signs that our civilization may be on the cusp of a whole new world of ET contact? Laura Eisenhower says The Invasion of Eden is a must-read book in these most critical times. Eric von Daniken adds, Paul Wallace is a brilliant author. I have full respect for him. The Invasion of Eden, in paperback on Amazon, April 9th. Looking for Bigfoot or UFO-themed merchandise? Look no further. Explore Night Dreams Talk Radio's store for an array of paranormal goodies, from t-shirts to mouse pads to socks to whatever the heck that thing is. Don't miss out on these unique items. Check us out today at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. While you're checking out the cool merchandise, go to the latest news tab to find out what's going on in the world and outside the world. Again, go to www.nightdreamstalkradio.com.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFOs, that's right. Gary's Talk Show Radio.